If you've gotten out of practice lately with your guitar, it can be good to have some short and easy and cool sounding riffs that you can play to get your fingers back in shape. It'll also be handy to have these ready to play to show off to a friend or to test out a guitar in a music store. So if you know how to play a G chord, I'm going to show you 5 tricks that you can add to it to impress any listener, even if you're just a beginner. Let's jump right in. All right, number 1. That country lick. We've all heard this lick before. It's an essential lick that you got to know for country or even blues guitar. Now the trick to make it a little easier is to try to play this 0-1-2 as what we call a double hammer-on. So you strike the string once, the A string, and then slam your first finger down and then the second finger down. Same thing on the D string. 0-2-0. All of it together. Almost always this riff is finished with a G chord like this. Let's look at some other spots you can do hammer-ons and pull-offs. The notes I'm playing here is called the G major pentatonic. 3rd fret, open, 3rd fret, open, 2nd fret, open, 2nd fret, open, 2nd fret, open, 3rd fret. But the trick is when you do hammer-ons and pull-offs, try to make sure that the riff always lands on the note G. That'll let the listener subconsciously know that this is a G riff. It can also be helpful to have a rhythm in mind, like 1E and a 2E and a 3 and a 4, and land on beat 4 on the G string, like this. 1E and a 2E and a 3 and a 4. You can also do hammer-ons going upwards. Just follow the shape on the diagram on the screen and practice using hammer-ons when you ascend through the scale going up, or descending, use pull-offs. Number 2, you might have noticed that there's 2 different ways that people often play the G chord. One looks like this, and one looks like this. You might have wondered, should I learn both of these or should I just pick one? Now, if you're a beginner, you should pick the most comfortable one at first and get comfortable with that. But as you develop, you should definitely learn both because there's situations where one shape might work better than the other. And it depends on what other chords it comes with. There's this thing called cowboy chords. The whole point of this group of chords is that it's easy to switch between them because these 2 fingers stay planted the entire time, but your 1st and 2nd finger can move around. If you're a beginner, practice doing this. G. Move these 2 fingers over as a pair. C, add an I. Move the index finger over one more, and you've got D sus4. And then go back to G. Now to add even more to that, you can play what's called E minor 7. So take this 2nd finger and move it over to the 2nd fret of the D string. Okay? Practice moving back to G. Now you would use this grip if you're using your traditional cowboy chords. What about the grip that starts with the 3rd finger? Now this grip is going to be good if it's paired with a C chord that looks like this, your traditional C chord grip. Now, the reason for that is because again, you would be moving these 2 fingers, your 3rd and 2nd finger, over as a pair to the next set of strings. For this one, you'd have to also add your index finger. But it's still easier than using this grip and then trying to switch your whole hand to the C. With some practice, you can do it without thinking. But of course, it's going to be a lot easier if you take this trick of the cowboy chords and learn how to use it. Number 3 is going to be other forms of the G chord. These are going to be special voicings, things that are going to sound cool, but still a G chord. So just playing those 3 strings, 2, 3, and 4, is a G chord. If you're just starting off, you can also add one finger to the 3rd fret of the 1st string. Now this is going to be helpful if you're pairing it with these other specialty chords. The 2nd fret of the 1st string, along with the G chord, makes what's called G major 7. And just pairing it with your G can make it sound beautiful and more interesting. Now another form of this G is called a G7, and that's if we take our 1st finger all the way to the 1st fret of the 1st string. And if you're more advanced, here's a trick that you can use to play those chords while using a full 6-string strum. And the trick here is flattening out the 3rd finger so that it mutes the A string. Now what I'm doing here is that you can see, if you took a look at this angle, instead of being very much on the tips of my fingers like this, I'm flattening them out just a little bit. The back edge of the 3rd finger will rub against this A string, just touching it just enough to where when I'm strumming through, the A string doesn't make a noise. The reason we want to do that is because now we can use our 2nd finger to play this nice G major 7 voicing, and then our 1st finger to play this nice G7 voicing. So practice doing that. And then those chords often will lead to a C chord. When you're doing this, you can also practice separating the parts, which means playing the bass note and then the top part of the chord. It separates it out, makes it sound a lot more professional. And then another form we have that comes up a lot in this case, we're playing what's called G sus4. Sus stands for suspended. Index finger is left over to play the 1st fret of the B string. Add this, you're playing like it's an ornament, meaning if you're just playing a regular G, you can add this to make it sound a little bit more colorful or interesting. Number 4 is alternating bass. This is something that's going to come up all the time. And for this, let's go back to our cowboy chord grip of the G. Alternating bass is going to sound like this. What we're doing here is we're separating those parts again. This is always something that you want to do when you're doing your strumming. It sounds more professional, and it's actually in a lot of ways easier than strumming all 6 strings every time. First, just hit the low note, the low E string by itself, then strum, aiming for the top 4 strings. Then alternate that with hitting the D string open and then strumming the top 3 or 4 strings again. When you alternate those back and forth, they'll sound like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. You can also add it in what we call a boom chicka pattern. Boom chicka, boom chicka, boom chicka, boom chicka, boom chicka. For that, you just do a down and then a down up on the upper string. Another way you can do this is instead of alternating to the D string, you can alternate to the A string. And then I'm going to show you another trick. A classic country strum that you've heard a bunch of times. Lowest string, a chicka strum on the top strings. Next, we're going to hammer on our index finger from open to the 2nd fret of the A string, and then do the next chicka. So it goes boom, chicka, boom, chicka, boom, chicka, hammer, chicka. A little faster. This is a really fun one to play, high energy, and it sounds great. Number 5 is going to be using walk-ups and walk-downs to get to these other chords in this group in a more interesting way. Let's start with the walk-down to G's relative minor chord, E minor. Walk down through the 2nd fret of the lowest E string, like this. And then the reverse, if you're going back to G, walk up through the 2nd fret of the lowest string, like this. G is very often also paired with the C chord. Here's how you can transition from a G to a C using a walk up. Now start with a G chord, and then walk up, open 2nd and 3rd fret of the A string, and then form your C chord. Now in context, it'll sound like this. You can do the reverse of that to get back to the G as well. Walk down the A string going 3rd fret, 2nd fret, open, and then land on a G chord, 3rd fret of the lowest E string. In context, it'll sound like this. Now the next next most common walk-up is going up to a D chord. A D chord and a C chord are almost always paired with G. There's a few ways you can walk up to D. Start with this one. G, 2nd fret, 3rd, open. Starting with this G, we're playing 2nd fret because our middle finger is already there, then playing 3rd fret of the A string, and then to a D open string. And then you can play the D chord. And then when you're walking back down to a G chord, you do the reverse of that. Try to put all those walk-ups together in this progression. Now last as a bonus, this is actually probably my favorite G chord trick, and it's the harmonic. Now since the open 2nd, 3rd, and 4th strings make up a G chord triad, if you play the harmonic at the 12th fret, that is another G chord triad, just an octave up. Here's how you do that. Now when you play a harmonic, placement is the most important thing. Placement has to be exactly above where that 12th fret wire is. Additionally, with the placement, you want to make sure that you're pressing down not at all. You're only gently touching the string, not enough at all for the string to be pushed down at all. Just the most gentle touch you could possibly do. Now, start with playing those 3 strings individually. Once you can do all those, try to see if you can do all 3 by flattening your finger out in that same spot, but then strumming those 3 strings. Now to make it sound even better, practice lifting your finger off right after you play, and it'll help those strings ring out even better.